interrupt this program for a special news bulletin. 3 young singers who soared to the heights of show business on the current rock and roll craze were killed today in the crash of a light plane in an Iowa snow flurry. The singers were identified as Ritchie Valens, 17, Buddy Holly, 22, and J.P. Richardson, known professionally as the Big Bopper. The aircraft, chartered from the Dwyer Flying Service, crashed near Mason City, ironically the setting for the prominent musical The Music Man. The pilot, Roger Peterson of Clear Lake, Iowa, was also killed. The 3 singers had appeared at the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa last night and were on their way to Fargo, North Dakota. Their small chartered plane crashed in a lonely farmyard about 15 miles northwest of Mason City. Cause of the crash was due to inclement weather conditions. Details upcoming from Action Central News.
He was the brainchild behind the ultimate teen love anthem of Donna and the smash hit La Bamba. Ritchie Valens, aka Ritchie Valenzuela, was the famous Mexican-American singer and songwriter of all time, one of the forefathers of rock and roll, and pioneer of the Chicano rock movement. But unfortunately, Valens' life came to an untimely end when Valens, along with famous rockers Buddy Holly and the Big Bopper Richardson, were tragically killed in a horrific plane crash in Fargo on February 3rd, 1959. It was known as the day that music died. Tune in as we sit down and talk about the life and career of Ritchie Valens with Pacoima's documentarian, historian, and even author and head of the Historical Society of Pacoima, Crystal Jackson. Tune in as she also gives us a little history lesson of the city of Pacoima. The Paranormal Aftermath. We take a deeper dive and look inside the premonitions that Ritchie Valens received before his untimely death. And we speak with Crystal in regards to local urban legends connected to Pacoima, one of which includes Gravity Hill. We travel to Iowa as we venture through the Surf Ballroom, the last venue where Valens, Holly, and the Big Bopper did their last show. What are the unexplainable activities that the staff and patrons have experienced within the ballroom? And what lingers in the Iowa airfield, which was the site of the crash? So join us, guys, as we head beyond the Hollywood city limits and travel to the San Fernando Valley. Join us as we go back in time to the 40s as we learn about the earlier life of Ritchie Valenzuela. Let's time warp to the 50s as we take a ride down Van Nuys Boulevard and then head on over to Fillmore as we learn more about Ritchie's career in music. Join us, friends, as we head to Pacoima and learn about the life and afterlife of Ritchie Valens. Side note, please excuse the sound quality of our interview with Crystal Jackson. We are true crime enthusiasts and paranerds and not sound engineers, and we do our very best to improve the sound quality of our interviews. So, in other words, don't at us. Now, let's get Holly weird. Hey guys.
Oh, hello.
Welcome to Hollywood Paranormal Blues. Hello. If you're new to Hollywood Paranormal and the world of podcasting, because I know that we have some new listeners.
Love it.
We are a Hollywood true crime and paranormal podcast where we talk about Hollywood true crime and its paranormal association, along with anything that's weird and mysterious about Hollywood and its outside areas, of course.
And also things we like to eat.
Of course. That too.
That's pretty weird too.
We could do a list of them.
Oh, real?
Oh yeah, it would like take up the whole episode.
Yes.
Pretty much. There you go.
Everyone stops listening.
And if you're just joining us for the 20th, 10th, 5th, 80th time,
Woo.
Guys, welcome. We miss you all, you Holly Weirdo OGs, of course. My name is Tammy Merheb Traves.
Hi, I'm Bryce Mitchell Williams.
And welcome So this season, we wanted to focus more on popular figures from LA.
Yeah.
And also popular groups, which we'll, kind of bring up later on in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But we wanted to bring light a few neighborhoods that make up this crazy yet amazing city of LA.
Mm-hmm.
And Boyle Heights, we see you. You're going to be getting your episode pretty soon. Another one is Pacoima.
Oh, God.
I mean Pacoima.
I feel like it is our civic duty to spread the word on how to pronounce
Pronounce
Pacoima.
it.
It's Pacoima.
It's Pacoima, guys.
And I'm white, so, like, if I can do it, so can you.
So can you. Bryce, before we were recording this episode, was playing this video for me, and the individual that was narrating could not pronounce it.
At all. I heard Pacoima. What was that? I can't remember the bad one.
Pacoima.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They emphasize the
Pacoima.
last phrase. I get it. Look, when you move here to LA from Indiana, I don't know where I'm pulling that reference from. Every even like lightly Hispanic sounding word is terrifying. You're just like La Jolla, La Cine. Like they all just look like a foreign language, and you don't know what you're talking about. And everyone's putting the word "the" in front of the freeway names, and it's very intimidating. And then you've been here for 10 years and are super jaded, and it is second nature to you, and you like making fun of people who are new.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, the Bryce Mitchell Williams story.
Well, we got you covered, Pacoima.
Got you, Pacoima.
Yeah, we're representing. So we are so excited to be bringing you this episode because we wanted to focus on another musical figure this time, and that is Ritchie Valens,
yes.
who's one of the forefathers of rock and roll and a pioneer of Chicano rock, but most of all, he is Pacoima's son. And while researching the late great musician Ritchie Valens, we wanted to know more about the singer and his music and his community, which is so important. And it's a community that to this very day still celebrates his music and his life. And so I started to research his birthplace of Pacoima and learned through Historical Society of Pacoima website that Pacoima is not just a dot in the San Fernando Valley. It's a city rich with history, culture, community, art. And this is just my take, Antonio's Tacos and Kebabs, just saying, because when my husband and I did Ciclavia last year, we stopped and got some tacos over there, and it was...
Oh my God, tacos sounds so good, you guys.
I know, tacos, menudo.
My roommates just got married last weekend, as we were discussing on the way in, and they had for their dinner, complete tangent, a taco bar, and I had so many tacos. I had like 10 tacos, I think, roughly.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, it was so brutal. I was so full, but then you dance it off, so it was like fine. And like
It
40 minutes
balances
later,
the
I wanted
sweet.
more tacos.
Yeah.
Ugh, but it was the best wedding food. Who knew tacos were such good wedding food?
There are.
Perfect.
They're good for any occasion.
Literally, I never don't want a taco. There's never a time where I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't need tacos. So I'm coming for you, Pacoima.
So in order to learn more about Ritchie Valens, we needed to get to know more about Ritchie Valenzuela, of course. We need to know more about his community and his neighborhood, his support system, and Pacoima in its own right. So in order to do that, we reached out to someone who not only grew up in Pacoima, but whose family grew up with Ritchie Valenzuela. And that is Crystal Jackson, who leads the Historical Society of Pacoima. And last weekend, I had the pleasure and opportunity to sit down with her over the phone and interview her and just pretty much talk about her hometown of Pacoima and the life and tragedy of Ritchie Valens. So here it is. Here's our interview with Crystal Jackson and a brief history on Pacoima. Hey guys, I'm sitting down with Crystal Jackson, who is the head point person of the Historical Society of Pacoima and an author in her own right, and also a documentarian. So Crystal, I have you on the line. Welcome to Hollywood Paranormal. And just tell us a little bit about yourself and your duties as, organizing the Historical Society of Pacoima and other projects you've been doing and have done in the past.
Well, I started off first doing a film called Pacoima Stories, Land of Dreams. And it was a documentary on the history of Pacoima, the 1500-year history of Pacoima. And that's what kind of started me off, and I gathered a ton of photographs. And I didn't want it to go to waste after the documentary. So I ended up forming founding the Pacoima Historical Society. And basically that's a digital library to help preserve the history of Pacoima and the surrounding areas. So I started that, and then after I did the film, I thought it would be easy to do a book, but to my chagrin, it was more difficult to do a book.
Yeah.
The book is coming out within the next few months. It's called The Entrance Pacoima Story, and it's like a 600-page history book with the great stories that I've come across and people that I've interviewed, and it's an exciting book. Each story within itself is worthy of a film within itself. That's how great some of the stories are that's in there. My editor was just saying that, and it excited me. I mean, Ritchie Valens, they already did on him, but there's a lot more that are worthy of that too, just by the nature of the stories.
Right. I'm looking at the website and the collections of stories, and also the icons and figures that make up Pacoima. I guess we can jump right into it with the history as well. The history of Pacoima dates back, I'm looking at this, to 450 AD, which is really interesting, and it just keeps on going and going and growing. Can you tell us a brief history of Pacoima, I guess starting from its earlier period till, I guess, now?
Well, it's difficult to do it briefly. I'm going to say that because the documentary had to be edited because it's so long. I'm having the same issues with the book.
Right.
But basically, it started like you read at 450 AD with the Tatavian tribe. They're the tribe that's indigenous to the San Fernando Valley, Simi Valley, Santa Clarita Valley, and Antelope Valley. So this was their territorial reign for all those years. Many years. And so that tribe has a very interesting story as to what ended up happening to them. They ultimately ended up getting, their tribal captain, Rogerio Rocha, ended up getting evicted from his land from a former U.S. senator who moved to the valley and purchased the northern half of the San Fernando Valley. His name was Charles McClay. And Charles McClay was seeking his property. Rogerio Rocha actually was granted 10 acres of land in the city of San Fernando. And he had great land. It had natural water springs on his land. And Charles McClay was suffering from droughts, and he needed that land. So he actually ended up formulating, I won't say fabricating, but he ended up manipulating the system to get Rogerio Rocha evicted off the land. And he threw him out on a winter night in November of 1885 in the street. His 80-year-old wife was sick, and Rocha ended up having to carry his wife to the San Fernando mission, and she ended up ultimately died of pneumonia.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, it was a real tragic story, and in the Herald, people wrote about it. There was like a ton of stories, people accounting for what happened, and they thought it was horrible. But an Indian could not sue a white man in those days, and Rocha was just basically SOL. But his story was interesting. He ended up moving to government land in Lopez Canyon, and actually lived to be 104 years old. Now, Charles McClay, on the other hand, shortly after that, ended up getting face cancer and died 7 short years after that. And a host of other bad things ended up happening. So where that lies in the cosmic world is unknown, but it was, a very interesting story as to how everything unfolded in Pacoima. But that's the start of the history. And then the town was purchased by another gentleman in 1888, Jewett Allen purchased Pacoima, and from there, Pacoima became, a town within itself, an official town. But he had a series of bad luck things happen to him as well. Jewett Allen wanted the town, it was the first sidewalks in the San Fernando Valley was built in Pacoima, and he wanted the town to be an elite town. He wanted everyone to spend at least $2,000 on Victorian homes, which today amounts to $400,000 value home. But he had saw this home, but everything basically failed. A flood of 1891 wiped out the town. Prior to the flood, a fire burnt down Jewett Allen's house. A lot of interesting things kind of happened in that history. But Pacoima ultimately became agricultural town by 1907-ish. it became agricultural town. So from there it was agricultural, and then it was determined they wanted it to be the minority section of the San Fernando Valley. They didn't want non-whites to live outside of that area. A few streets in North Hollywood allowed minorities to purchase, but the Japanese, the Mexicans, African Americans all ended up being limited to purchasing land and homes in Pacoima. So that's where the interesting history starts.
Right.
So in 1950, so the Japanese came in the early 1900s, and they were farmers and had great skills in cultivating the land. So they had successes, but then there was laws enacted in 1913 and 1920 to limit what the land ownership and the alien rights, and they did all this stuff to suppress the Japanese success in the town. And then the Mexicans that migrated over from Mexico were buying houses, and they actually, a lot of them farmed the land, but were in construction work. And then in 1950, they wanted. It was right after World War II. They needed a place to put African Americans because Los Angeles had a shortage of housing, and African Americans were only allowed to purchase in select areas in Los Angeles. One of them being Watts. The other one was tantamount to South Central Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. Outside of there, blacks weren't allowed to buy either. So they opened it up so the GI loans would be accepted in Pacoima. So an influx of African Americans came in, and from there the story just grows with the number of people that just did amazing things. And all the stories, like I said, within themselves are nothing short of jaw-dropping. And I'm writing the book, and my jaw drops when I come across all these stories. I mean, they were responsible in the 60s for actually starting the Pan-African Studies departments and Chicano Studies departments at the UC campuses at Cal State Northridge. Oh, wow. And the campuses across the country. Yeah. They started that with the incident that happened in 1968, where they actually, the Black Student Union actually took over the administration building, and it was a big deal. It involved Governor Reagan at the time, and it was just a very interesting story. They ended up being called the Valley State 19, and they ended up being prosecuted by the Charles Manson prosecutor.
Oh, wow.
And they were sentenced to the most consequential sentence in the country for college activists. They got the worst sentence. They all went to jail, lost their credits, their ability to go back to campus.
No.
But the good of that came, even despite what happened to those individuals, those departments, those Pan-African Studies, now it's called Africana Studies, and the Chicano Studies and other ethnic studies were developed. And the EOP, Equal Opportunity Program, grew. So because of that sacrifice, the college campuses in the country benefited.
It's an end result. I mean, out of the dark came a lot of this light that really, helped improve, these studies and these departments, at these colleges and universities. So.
Absolutely. And they got more professors hired there that were of color, of all the color nationalities, and just a lot of. It was a difficult thing, and I actually interviewed one of the people that was actually involved in that incident, and she said it was horrible, and they lied on them, and they, the stories got exaggerated. The press was against them, but despite all of that, she still doesn't regret helping achieve people of color being able to have more college resources. Yeah, that was one of the stories I'm super proud of with Pacoima. Yeah. Not to mention, again, all the other great people that came out of Pacoima. I mean, we literally had the list is massive, and I hope I don't forget any. But we have, as of right now, we have 2 Congress people. We have a California Secretary of State. We have a state assembly person, all from Pacoima. So our political history is pretty good. We have Congressman Tony Cardenas. We have Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who is actually right now from Oakland, but she went to San Fernando High School. Secretary of State Alex Padilla, and then we have Assemblywoman Luz Rivas. So we have a nice, a nice end path to what all the early activism did in Pacoima. But in addition to the politicians, there's musicians, There's Heisman Trophy winners. We have world champion boxers, Bobby Chicano and Benny the Jet Urquidez, and his sister, Lily Rodriguez, was a world champion boxer. I mean, the list is just so massive. We have movie directors and producers, Kenya Barris, who did Blackish and Girls Trip and some other films out there. He was born in Pacoima. We even have Kurt Russell, who would never admit it, but he actually played baseball at Pacoima Junior High.
Jaw-dropping is a phrase that we can use.
Also, teeth grinding, I think, could apply.
I know,
Might just like fury towards fellow white people.
Seriously.
Why?
Leave it to a white man.
Yeah.
No offense, but leave it to a white man. You think having so many disasters and tragedies here, especially in the state of California, you almost think it was, built over thousands of acres of ancient Indian burial grounds.
Yeah, it's really frustrating to hear those stories because in some ways they're so far removed. I've never done those things, but it's not that far back. When you start looking at the actual timeline, the way that we're taught, here it is. Shout out to Pam, because here I go, girl. I'm going to do a real rant. We're taught this sort of especially the civil rights movement as ancient history. And it's no, that's a generation removed. And you start thinking about the way that Native Americans were treated, and that's 3 generations removed. And you start talking about slavery in this country, and that's 4 generations. It's so silly because we talk about it like it's happened so long ago. And oh, why can't we get over this? It's we're not over it.
We're not.
Our grandparents were dealing with these atrocious things, and it's yeah, we've come a long way, but not far enough to be get over it. It just baffles me. So as she was telling me these stories, it's just so disheartening. Ugh, what a gross history we have. What an amazing history too, because exactly like you said, these things that rose up out of it are so inspiring and amazing, but goddamn the things that it took to get to those points.
Yeah, maybe we needed to get to those points to as a community stand together,
Yeah. One might also argue, how much higher could they have soared had, white people not stolen from them? But,
exactly.
Sure.
True. Absolutely. I mean, like she said, in the 60s, we had those 2 departments instilled. People fought for African-American studies and Chicano studies. And, I mean, just saying it, this town was built by immigrants.
Yeah, literally. I mean, it's just so...
From everywhere. We have Mexican Americans, African Americans, Korean Americans, Japanese and Chinese Americans, because those were the ones that actually helped us with the railroad.
Yeah.
Just saying. Yeah. We had the Dutch. Can't forget them. We had Jews. We had,
it really is such an amalgam of culture and, Yeah, it's very frustrating. So you even said, as I was listening, I'm just sitting here because it's so frustrating to hear those parts of our history, but then the things that come out of them and
a phoenix rising out of his ashes.
Yeah. And all those representatives that she was mentioning.
Absolutely.
I love them.
And sports figures.
Yeah, it's so amazing.
And of course, we cannot forget Pacoima's son, Ritchie Valens.
That old so-and-so.
So that was a brief history of Pacoima and the stellar figures that came out of that little town. Pacoima in itself is a diverse little city, not to mention, even in the early 1900s, the first African-American restaurant was established there, Lee's Restaurant. So we're going to jump ahead, guys, and we're going to explore more of the life and afterlife of Ritchie Valens, of course. So you know how we do, guys. We will first go over Ritchie's early life, his career, and Bryce will cover February 3rd, 1959, the tragic day when the music died, when 3 of rock and roll's important figures, Valens, Buddy Holly, and Big Bopper, Richardson, perished in a tragic plane crash. Then the moment you all been wondering, is there a paranormal association? We'll go over Ritchie's premonition and the conspiracy theories of the horrific plane crash. And are there Ritchie Valens ghosts? What the workers of the Surf Ballroom has reported after seeing what they feel are apparitions, along with what people have reported seeing over the field, which was the site of the crash. And Crystal Jackson will also deliver some of Pacoima's local legends. One in particular is Gravity Hill. So in order to begin, guys, we need to go back. we need to go back to Pacoima in 1941.
Yes.
So Valens was born Richard Stephen Valenzuela on May 13th of 1941 in Pacoima, California. His parents, Joseph Stephen Valenzuela and Concepcion Concha Reyes, were from Mexico. So he was the second of 5 siblings, with older brother Bob Morales, younger sisters Connie and Irma, and younger brother Mario Ramirez. And Ritchie was brought up hearing traditional Mexican mariachi music, followed by some flamenco guitar, R&B, and some jump blues. And Ritchie expressed an interest in making music of his own by the age of 5. And he was encouraged by his father to take up and learn the guitar and trumpet. And then later, Ritchie even taught himself how to play the drums. Though Ritchie was left-handed, he was so eager to learn to play the guitar and master it traditionally right-handed, which is very impressive. So by the time Ritchie was attending junior high school, he would bring his guitar to school and sing and play songs to his friends on the bleachers. And when he was 16 years old, he was invited to join a local band called the Silhouettes. Yes. And this is not the group famous for the hit song Get a Job, but he began as a guitarist, and when the main vocalist left the group, Ritchie assumed the position. So on October 19th of 1957, he made his performing debut with the Silhouettes. And he was getting so much recognition from it. And people were just like going crazy over him. So by this time, everyone knew of his musical talents and everyone knew of his fear. You see, Ritchie had a fear of flying and he had a fear of planes. The interesting thing about his story was Ritchie's fear of flying and Ritchie's fear of planes that was actually brought on by a premonition. Yes, Ritchie knew deep down inside that flying in a plane would be his final destination. Crystal explains it all here, along with all the other details of his life and career. So let's jump into it.
I was lucky enough to have the experience and the information from both my parents. My father lived on the same street as Ritchie Valens, and my mother lived around the corner. This was, when they were younger. And they actually graduated in 1958, a year before Ritchie was scheduled to graduate. But he came and played at her in their garage time. He always walked around with his guitar, and he came and they were friends. They all hung out.
Oh, wow.
And he always talked about he was afraid of planes. And the reason he was afraid was because not far from the homes was Whiteman Airport. At that time, it was called Whiteman Air Park. But it was right across the way, and there was a lot of low-flying planes that were pretty intimidating. I'll tell you, we lived, with my mom, we lived right across the street for a while from the airport. And as a fun thing for us as kids, she used to let the planes, fly over our heads. She'd stop the car when she saw a plane was coming, and the plane would fly over. But there was a lot of small aircraft, but there was a lot there, and that's what we were told frightened, or I was told. And I interviewed another lady named Irene Diaz, and she went to school with him from elementary all the way to high school. And she said he always talked about he didn't like planes. So then what happened was in 1957, at Pacoima Junior High was getting ready for their graduation. And he was at his grandfather, Frank Reyes' funeral, and 2 aircraft crashed. They actually crashed at Hanson Dam, but the plane debris fell on Pacoima Junior High and the neighboring Talavera Elementary. And one of Ritchie's friends was injured, and he had already had premonitions, and this just exasperated everything, his whole fear of flying, based on that crash. And it was a big deal at that time because it was actually not Air Force, but it was military plane that was conducting some sort of experiment over populated areas and crashed with another plane midair, and that should have never happened. And the president got involved. I believe it was, I want to say Roosevelt, I could be wrong, but the president got involved, and they actually had to go through a series of hearings as to why they were flying over populated areas. But, it still didn't negate the fact that Ritchie, it really affected him the worst of anybody.
Right. And of course, because I'm reading here that 8 children were killed in this accident. That's horrible.
Yeah, well, it was 8 people died. It was 3 children, and it was the aircraft people.
Oh, my goodness.
The airmen. Yeah, so it actually, in retrospect, but 74 kids got injured. So it was still pretty bad. One of the ladies that was in the article I read, she said her house smelled like gasoline for days. To get the smell out, and I can imagine how horrifying that would be. But because when she was in her house, the windows were crashing all around and debris was flying. She had to guard her kids from doing it, so it was pretty violent.
I mean, what a place to live if you have a fear of planes and flying when you're living close to a field and then this happens. I mean, those poor kids, and also poor Ritchie, he's like anxiety driven at this point with this accident and living next to this airfield. This is crazy.
I know.
And what a time to live in, and what an area to live in, especially with this tragedy as well. So,
right. And he had the premonition, and it made him not want to fly once he became a musician, and he got discovered by Bob King from Delphi Records, and all of a sudden he just blew up like instantly. It seemed like he was on American Bandstand. He did a movie Go and he couldn't even go to high school anymore because he was just traveling and doing all kind of stuff.
Yeah, he was working at the age of 17. Like, he was like a musician by then already.
Well, think about it. He was only on the national scene for 8 months. Mm-hmm. But look at the recognition. A 17-year-old that's only been, he only did, I think it was one national song. The rest didn't make the national charts. But, a lot of people know of him. But he didn't do he didn't have a long career. But yet he's the most popular icon in Pacoima. People love Ritchie Valens.
Of course, yeah. I mean, there are murals still painted of him all over, certain areas of Los Angeles, and I'm sure from what I've seen in pictures, like, especially in Pacoima, they still honor him and his legacy, of course. Let's talk about your family members, too. Like, how was Ritchie growing up? Like, what type of teenager he was?
Well, my mom described him as just a happy boy. She said he was a chubby boy, but everybody loved him. She said literally nobody had a dislike for Ritchie. Aww. That was the general consensus. And my dad hung out with him, like I said, he hung up in my mom's garage, and she just had nothing but great things to say. And she mentioned when they knew he was going on tour, and when they heard the plane crash, she was just like, they just looked at each other. They didn't even know how to process that information because he was so endeared to the entire community. So, they just said he was fun, to be around, and they just had good things to say about him. Everyone that I interviewed had nothing but good things to say about him.
Aww. And his house is still standing off of Fillmore, right?
There's a house there from Fillmore, but from my research, which I didn't know, the house on Fillmore, the mom lost that house.
Oh, no.
Ended up losing that house, and they moved to Gain Street. And apparently that particular house on Gain Street is the one that the family still owns. And they actually have the living room set up as a shrine to Ritchie.
Doesn't that give you goosebumps?
Yeah, it's so crazy.
But isn't that sweet how, like, people remembered him growing up as being this happy, jolly, and yes, chubby boy.
Sure. Like baby fat.
No, it's just baby fat. It's just his mom's love.
Yeah.
Speaking about love, let's move on to Ritchie's first love. Let's come out of this world of premonitions and crashes and into a little bit of light right here. You see, Ritchie was in love, and he had a first love. Bryce, don't you remember your first love? Pizza?
Well, yes.
It was pizza.
That's
right?
my only love, yes.
Me, it was New Kids on the Block.
Ooh.
Yeah, Joe McIntyre. Mm-hmm. Now, another thing everyone knew about Ritchie is that he was in love, and he did have a first love. And during high school, Ritchie meets a PYT, this little pretty young thing named Donna Ludwig. Nice. And that girl will forever be the chorus and title of one of his most memorable songs. Cue music.
Yeah.
So in 1957, Ritchie and Donna met at a garage party where Ritchie was playing. And it was love at first sight. They were high school sweethearts and they dated for 2 years. And then they end up breaking up because of rumors that, Donna's dad didn't approve of Ritchie. And then I heard other stories that they just mutually broke up. But that didn't stop the both of them from still continuing a friendship and also communicating with one another. Ritchie would write to her every single day while he was on tour and call her to sing to her. And he also wrote the hit romantic song, Donna. Now, in an interview Donna Ludwig Fox did with RitchieValens.com, she shares her little story. Ritchie was my first true love and my first experience losing someone I loved. Ritchie was truly a really good guy, kind and polite. He liked to dress well and always look good. I still remember his aftershave Old Spice. Ritchie spoke often about his family and he wanted to buy his mom a home. And Ritchie's mom and I grew very, very close. She made me feel like family, and she even taught me how to cook Ritchie's favorite foods, tamales, menudo, and enchiladas. I mean, no wonder he was chubby, right? Girl, I mean, look, when your mom is cooking that, you don't worry about the weight, right? No. So Ritchie's family has also influenced me and my family by showing me that with love and support of family, nothing is too difficult. And they are a true blessing to me and my family. Donna was actually a really good comfort to Ritchie's mom and sisters after Ritchie's death, and Donna has attended the Winter Dance Party concert for the last several years as a special guest. And her graciousness to Ritchie's fans and support of Ritchie's family still continues to show the bond that was created almost 60 years ago, which is really, really sweet.
So sweet.
And if you go on RitchieValens.com, you can see pictures of her, what she looked like. She was a beautiful young thing, blonde, blue-eyed, and there's pictures of her, like, after that tragic day, sitting in his room with all of his guitars, playing the 45 Donna. I mean, you could tell, like, she was really, really distraught. And I mean, you could tell, like, in the pictures, like, it told a story.
Yeah.
Now, moving forward to his stardom, as Crystal Jackson described in the last interview right there, Bob King, the owner and president of small record label Delphi Records in Hollywood, was given a tip in May of 1958 by San Fernando high school student Doug Macchia about a young performer from Pacoima named Richard Valenzuela. Kids knew the performer as the Little Richard of San Fernando. Now, swayed by the Little Richard comparison, Keane went to see Valenzuela play a Saturday morning matinee at a movie theater in San Fernando, and impressed by the performance, he invited Ritchie to audition at his home in Silver Lake, which is a little area of Los Angeles where he had a small recording studio in his basement. So after his first audition, Keane instantly signed Ritchie to Delphi on May 27th of 1958. At this point, the musician took the name Ritchie because, as Keane said, there were a bunch of Richards around at the time, and I wanted to be different. I wanted him to be different. And similarly, Keane recommended shortening his surname to Valens from Valenzuela to widen his appeal beyond any obvious ethnic group, as Crystal describes in our next interview, which, I mean, this was the 50s, of course.
Sure.
But I feel like that's still echoed today, too.
Oh, God, yes.
Like, look at, like, Selena, for example. Selena Quintanilla or Selena y los Dinos. It's just now Selena, you know? But still, it still echoes that to this day. After several songwriting and demonstration recording sessions with Keane in his basement studio, Keane decided that Ritchie was ready to enter the studio with a full band backing him. So the first songs recorded in studio were Come On, Let's Go. Valens' next record was a double A-side, the final record to be released in his lifetime, and it had the song Donna, which was coupled with La Bamba. It sold over 1 million copies and was awarded a gold disc. So by autumn of 1958, the demands of Valens' career forced him to drop out of high school, and Keane booked appearances at venues across the U.S. and performances on television programs. So Valens had that fear of flying due to the freak accident at his junior high, and he eventually overcomes his fear of flying when Keane tells him, you need to travel all over the U.S. to promote. You have to do it. So he ends up flying. He ends up traveling to Philadelphia to appear on the Dick Clark's American Bandstand television show on October 6, where he sang Come On, Let's Go, and then he travels all over the states performing, and by December 27th, he returned to Philly again to appear on American Bandstand another time, but this time he's performing his hit tune, Donna. And in early 1959, Valens was traveling the Midwest on a multiple-act rock and roll tour dubbed the Winter Dance Party. Accompanying him were Buddy Holly, Dion and the Belmonts, JP the Big Bopper Richardson, and Frank Shardo. It was going to be the biggest tour to date, and unfortunately, it would be his last. Mm-hmm. So you have the receipts on the crash.
So basically, this tour was like nightmare.
Oh,
so they're driving
absolutely.
around on like basically a slightly elevated school bus all over the Midwest in February. Like, you honestly, I cannot think of a worse fate. And we've talked about this in other episodes, specifically the Judy Garland episode, the Jane Mansfield episode, any episode that talks about anyone who's famous. But being famous at this time was really like a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. You kind of are like a slave to your own fame, and this is like, once again, no exception. So basically they did 11 stops in 10 days, and it was the first 11 stops of like a 32 stop tour. So they're like a third of the way through, and you know, there's like this map on one of the documentaries that I was watching, and it shows like where like stop 1, stop 2, stop 3, and like stop 1 and 3 would be like 30 miles apart, and stop 4 or like stop 2 would be 400 miles away.
No.
So they would be like on this bus in the February like Dakota winter, driving every single night to perform night after night. So they were all super sick.
Of course, because like it's like a nice, healthy negative 20 degrees.
They got frostbite on the bus. Like, I'm sorry. If you're getting frostbite from traveling to like perform, and like these shows are not small shows.
No, especially in a vehicle. Come on.
Yeah, like get them a nicer bus. God forbid. So it's like this weird thing where it's like these huge names. I mean, at the time, especially if you really look at like where the history of rock and roll was, these are 3 like monumental names. They're all pretty young. Obviously, like JP Richardson was the oldest. He was 28. Like, he's the old soul on the tour. And then Buddy Holly's 22, and Ritchie Valens 21 or 22, and Ritchie Valens is 17. So it's like these very like powerhouse names. Elvis is like not touring at the time. He's in the army. Like, there's all these other like players in the rock and roll world who were like aren't touring or producing music at this time. Like, this was it. Like, this literally was the only tour happening in the country for rock and roll, which is insane to me. But then you look at it and they're like dying in the Midwestern tundra. So essentially, Buddy Holly notoriously did not want to do this tour, but kind of needed the money. Essentially, he was basically cash poor, as all celebrities at this time were, because the studios wouldn't pay them in cash.
Yeah, especially him and Big Bopper were, I mean, they were married. Big Bopper, you know, is expecting a son.
Yeah, actually, Buddy Holly was as well at the time.
Oh.
Yeah. So, like, they need
they're like
money.
Yeah.
They're rich. They're famous. And yet they're in this, like, school bus driving across.
Oh, jeez.
Like, the number, like, the bus would break down. They would get frostbite. They were performing night after night. JP Richardson is, like, super sick.
All of them
still
are,
performing.
yeah.
So, the reason I even bring any of that up is that, A, being famous is, like, a nightmare. B, they're all super sick, and Buddy Holly is over it. So, after their performance in Clear Lake, Iowa, which was the 11th stop on the tour, he and his 2 bandmates, essentially, like, he charters a private plane. He's like, we can't keep doing this. We're going to fly so that we can arrive at the next stop early and get some rest. Like, we're really sick. It's really cold. I can't be on that bus anymore. So he and his 2 bandmates, Tommy Alsop and Waylon Jennings of country music fame, essentially book a plane to the next stop, and it's like a little puddle jumper, like a 4-seater.
It's a Beechcroft Bonanza.
Yes. Which is like, when you see pictures of it, you're like, can 4 people fit in
Really?
that clown car of a plane? It's
yes, it was so tiny.
Like, I got in the back seat. I'm like, where? On the back tail? Like, so they essentially book this, and then everyone else is going to like bus and meet them, and they're going to try and get some rest. And what ends up happening is that Waylon Jennings, however you want to say it, he kind of, out of like the kindness, tells J.P. Richardson, you should take my seat, you're so sick. I mean, he was really, really sick. He would like perform and come off the stage and like pass out. And so at the Clear Lake, Iowa show, it's like a 1,500 person show, which like is mind blowing to me. Like, where are all these people coming from? But they were like driving in.
Oh, they're driving from everywhere.
This is like this huge Midwestern tour of like 1,000 or more person venues every night, which is insane. So J.P. Richardson's now on the plane, and the guitarist Tommy Alsop essentially, allegedly, does a coin toss with Ritchie Valens, and Ritchie Valens then takes his seat on the plane. So now, instead of Buddy Holly and his guitar, like who he initially bought it, and he like notoriously was like making fun of them, was like, oh, you're idiots, you shouldn't have given your seats up, like good luck on the bus. And so now it's Ritchie Valens, J.P. Richardson, and Buddy Holly, and the pilot, somewhere on this page, Roger Peterson. The 4 of them are now flying out of Fargo to the next stop. And essentially there was a weather advisory, but because of the time, it was like 12:50 at night, 12:55, they don't hear it. The pilot doesn't hear it. And so essentially they all get to the flight. The tour manager drops them off, kind of like wishes them well, and then within 5 miles of, so like what, like roughly 5 minutes, the plane crashes and is immediately decimated. The impact is like on frozen ground, and they're all instantly killed. And so essentially I know it's just quick.
so quick and tragic. And
yeah.
And after the crash, like, it took how long for people to finally find them?
So on one of the interviews I was watching, the tour manager, he was like he would do like interviews, and he like interrupted the interview that he was doing promoting the tour, read a news point bulletin saying like a plane had crashed outside of Fargo. It doesn't even cross his mind, and he continues on with the tour promotion.
Oh, no.
And it was after that interview that they're like, this that you just read, and he's like, no, that's not them. And they're like, no, it's Buddy
them.
and Ritchie and JP, and like he didn't even know. And then like, because of, again, the sort of like little care that the studios took with the lives and sort of courtesy of the stars and their family, the family members start finding out because the news is reporting it. They like didn't even get a phone call, or like were being like, no, that's not true, and it's like being reported on the news. So like all of Ritchie Valens' family finds out from like friends or from the radio station. None of them were like called and told. So it's like this like weird piecing together of like, is it true? Is it not true? It was like the worst way it could have been handled. And on top of all of that, they continue the tour, which like blows my mind. So Waylon Jennings basically has to take over for Buddy Holly, and like other players in the tour fill in and are like being low-key forced to sing the songs of like their 3 friends. And like in the interviews they all talk about it, like they couldn't, like the 3 best people on that tour were killed. Like they were the nicest, they were the most talented, they were like the brightest stars, and then we were being forced to like go on with the tour,
go on, dress up, you know, put on a show face, and you know, just sing the tunes.
Yeah.
And they were just like, are you serious?
For 20 more shows,
yeah,
essentially.
Well, the show must go on. It's like, but the opening groups of these shows, like, they all died.
Yeah. So then, you know, it's sort of this weird thing. I kind of briefly mentioned it, but it's this sort of weird lull in rock and roll history, because all of these, like, the three arguably biggest rock and roll stars at the time are now dead. Elvis is in the Army, and when he gets back out of the Army, his career sort of like tanks, and then we kind of enter into like Vegas era Elvis, which, you know, no judgments. You've got people who are, you know, Jerry Lee Lewis is embroiled in scandal for marrying his minor aged cousin, excuse me. So it's like these big names in the rock and roll world. There's like this void almost, and there's no sort of recollection or memory. It's like everyone forgets that these three men existed, that their music existed. And then in the wake of that, the Beatles come. Sorry, you're getting some like light music history. And that takes over, like the UK invasion completely circumvents.
That's
and it's
the
like
60s right there.
Yeah, and it's like this huge wave. There was like this void of rock and roll. The Beatles come in. It's this new era, and it literally is like these bygone decades where like the three arguably most contributing members to early rock and roll are nearly forgotten. And then flash forward, and Don McLean writes American Pie in 1971 based on the tragedy of the plane crash, which they had in that time, those 2-ish decades, named The Day Music Dies. And he writes it, and it sort of creates this revival.
Thank God.
That we're still now benefiting from.
Yes.
Where people were like, oh, right, like their songs live on, but like it was because of his song. It almost like jarred people awake, and we're like, oh, right, like these three men were like such young, bright stars that were snuffed out, and it sort of created like a renaissance of their music. And, you know, following that shortly with their induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I don't know, it's just like I find that so weird that it's like not only was the plane crash so devastating and like quick and tragic and weird that they all three ended up on the plane, it was like everyone forgot about it for 20 years, and then we're like, oh right,
these were the three forefathers of rock and roll.
So I don't know,
it's so true. So I mean, even in his lyric of Don McLean's song, my favorite verse in that song is those boys got the last train to the coast. It was the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Father being Big Bopper, the Son, Ritchie Valens, and the Holy Ghost is Buddy Holly. Yeah. That whole like chorus, like that line gives me goosebumps to this very day. But you're so right. I mean, it's like kind of like they were here and then they were forgotten, and then all of a sudden it took like a musician to show these people that these other musicians existed.
Yeah. And then of course there was the movies like Gary Busey and the Ritchie Valens movie, which we're going to talk about.
But real quickly, what I wanted to touch is the conspiracies of the crash.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to talk about like the semi-verifiable facts.
Oh, yeah. No, of course, because those are facts that need to be like, you know, told.
But let's talk about some
conspiracies, because it just seems like even though these men were forgotten, the crash wasn't forgotten.
Right.
It was still a cold case. So there were a lot of conspiracy theories that are attached to this tragedy, which I felt really bad for whoever is connected to these three individuals.
No.
It's like you can't let these poor gentlemen rest in peace. So conspiracy theorists at its best discovered a silver bullet theory. I don't know if you heard about this one. So the silver bullet theory is this. Buddy Holly gets into an argument with the pilot Roger Peterson, and Holly has a gun because he's from Texas and everyone in Texas has a gun, and he
can confirm
he shoots Peterson and possibly the Big Bopper. So this theory grew into a tall tale because a few weeks after the crash, the owner of the field where the plane crashed found the gun. So he finds his gun, he turns it into the police, and then they discover that it's Holly's gun. They turn it into an investigator, but before the investigator touches it, it is later discovered that the gun had been fired twice. So there are all these theories. Oh, like, so was it fired while they were in the air? Like, what happened? And it turned out that the sheriffs that had the gun in the first place, after it was turned in, had used it for, like, I guess, shooting practice.
Sure. Forensic evidence be damned.
But rumors were still coming out of the woodwork since 1959 that the Big Bopper survived the initial impact of the crash and tried to, like, run out for help. Skeptics of the official conclusion say that all victims died on impact, but Richardson's body was the only one found a significant distance from the wreckage, because his body was found about 40 feet away from the crash. So another rumor was that the Bopper had suffered a gunshot wound and was trying to run for help, but died due to the wound and the forces of like the weather. So in 2007, it took the Big Bopper's son to do a special to debunk this rumor. So he hires Dr. Bill Bass, founder of the University of Tennessee Anthropological Research Facility, and they investigate the rumors by exhuming his father's body.
Oh, no.
So Bass concluded by examining x-rays of the body that there was no evidence of gunshot wounds and that the Bopper's massive injuries made it impossible for him to have moved his own body.
Yeah.
So in this interview, he states, like, I'm looking at the x-rays and this poor man endured 200 fractures from his, like, the top of his skulls all the way to his toes. Yeah, so there was just no way that he could have survived this crash. And second, there was no gunshot wound. And it was sad because, like, what was so morbid but yet bittersweet is, you can find this video too on YouTube, is you see Big Bopper's son, like, meeting his dad for the first time in this coffin. Because he was born.
He was born after the plane crash.
So it's like, you're seeing this happen, this reunion between father and son. And it's very bittersweet because, like, you're thinking, oh, he's going to freak out. No, he's just like, it was just a nice reunion. You can see him, like, praying and saying something under his breath. Yeah. But according to Dr. Bass, like, his body was miraculously well preserved as well.
Damn.
So, yeah, you could find that video on YouTube. Let's see. Another theory was that someone shot down the plane. Someone shot down the plane.
With what?
Exactly. Someone shot down the plane. That was another theory that was like swimming around. Third theory was that Buddy Holly was flying the plane. He paid off the pilot and they were drinking, and Buddy Holly was drinking and crashed the plane. So that was another theory. But according to reports did conclude that the crash was caused by pilot Roger Peterson's decision to fly in bad weather without appropriate instrument training, which may have led him to misread a gauge and mistakenly fly the Beach Bonanza into the ground in a steep right bank. Now, the report also notes that Peterson was not told just before takeoff that the weather conditions had worsened. But in 2015, this case is still brought into light. According to Guardian.com, in 2015, federal safety investigators have indicated that they are considering a request to re-examine the accident. The request came from L.J. Kuhn, a pilot who has made his own investigation into the crash and has approached the National Transportation Safety Board's cold case unit, urging them to take another look. So Kuhn believes that the finding of the Civil Aeronautics Board in 1959 that the accident was primarily caused by pilot error amounts to an injustice for Roger Peterson, the pilot. So the flight expert is encouraging federal investigators to consider other factors that could help explain the disaster. He points to a possible weight imbalance in the craft. Peterson and Holly up front weighed about 160 pounds each, while Valens and Richardson were considerably a little heavier. Newly installed flight instruments, as well as a possible commotion among the passengers shortly after takeoff, is still an ongoing investigation.
Interesting.
Yes.
I wonder, like, what, I mean, I guess, in pursuit of the truth, but, like, what does that prove, I guess? That, like, he just wasn't at fault?
Yes, he felt that there was an injustice with the pilot. Like, I'm a fellow pilot, and I want to step into the light and defend Roger. Because a lot of people were blaming the pilot. There were rumors that he was drunk. There was rumors that he wasn't well trained. And there were rumors that he should have known. People were trying to figure out the cause of this crash, and they blamed the pilot.
It's interesting because, like, as we were, like, learning about this, I guess I just immediately jumped to the weather. And I was like, oh,
Me too.
It's so sad that, like, he didn't get the memo that, like, the weather had, like, deteriorated.
That's
so
the thing.
It never even crossed my mind that he was, like, at fault. I just consider him a fellow victim. So I didn't.
I agree.
Because there was, in one of the interviews, the one guy was like, I wouldn't have put them on the plane if he hadn't been a capable pilot. And I was like, that's a weird soundbite. Like, it's like this one-off thing. Mm-hmm. I was like, why did they put that in there? That now makes more sense. Because this is like, I think it was like in the 80s that this was filmed, based on just, I don't know, the hairstyles alone. But I like, as I was watching it, I was like, why did he say that? Like, what is he even referencing? So that does make a lot of sense. But like, when I was like reading it and watching and like looking at all the plane crash footage, I was like, oh god, he just didn't know how bad the weather was. And like, God, that plane is so tiny. It's as big as this kitchen
and it
table.
was a snowstorm, and everyone's like, no, that was his fault. But you have to understand too, to be fair, this is 1959.
Yeah,
aeronautics is still not as advanced as it is today.
Right.
And the ways of communication back then were literally slow.
Yeah.
They moved at a glacial pace. Yeah. And they needed to get out. They wanted to leave. And he was like, okay, I guess it might clear up.
Yeah. Oh, that makes me sad.
It does. And
it's like, at the end of the day, that person also has family that like
exactly.
has lost a family member. Like, I don't know. That's really sad.
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. The weather, the weight of the plane, the condition of the plane, and also quite possibly, yes, he was most likely still green. Yeah. You know,
I mean,
the pilot.
He was only 21.
He was 21. He, just got his training and everything. And this was advanced flying for him, in my opinion. Yeah. And look what happened.
Well, it's just hard too, because like there's this sort of thing I think that happens where, as the only non-famous member of the victims list, it's very easy to like
point a finger to
and
blame.
To exile him. You know what I mean?
Yes,
like,
which I think is not right.
These three like stars died, and this like nobody. It's like, well, calm down. Like, there's still a person dead, and like.
And I give it to Pacoima because I went to this location in Pacoima off of Mural Avenue or Mural Row. It's off of 13433 Van Nuys Boulevard, but you can see the mural of Ritchie Valens, Buddy Holly, Big Bopper, and they added
that's
the
really
pilot,
sweet. Yeah.
Roger Peterson. They added him there, which I thought was really nice.
He's on the memorial at the last venue they performed at.
Oh,
as
wonderful.
Well. He is like below them, but it's like all part of the same statue.
Right.
And like there's one in the actual field that he's a part of as well.
Right.
So that's kind of sweet.
That is very, very sweet. Now we can move forward with the hit film La Bamba, guys.
I mean, I just want to commemorate us. I've been really fighting against singing that this whole episode. Good for us.
I would love to hear you sing it.
I want to sing it so
you're going to
bad.
sound so white.
I know. Oh, well, I would be meowing it the whole time. You know I only meow songs, so.
Well, guys, La Bamba is a 1987 American biographical film written and directed by Luis Valdez that follows the life and career of Chicano rock singer, of course, Ritchie Valens. The film stars Lou Diamond Phillips as Ritchie Valens, Issei Morales, Rosana De Soto, Elizabeth Pena, and Danielle Von Zernick, along with Joe Pantoliano. So the film depicts the impact of Valens' career, which he had on everyone's lives, especially that of his half-brother Bob Morales, his girlfriend Donna Ludwig, and the rest of his family. And in 2017, the film was selected for preservation in the U.S. National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. Aww. But once again, Hollywood has a way of not being 100% accurate.
Sure.
And here we go again. Cynthia explains it right here with the inaccuracies of the film. Compared to the movie, what were the things that they got wrong, and what were the things that they got right in La Bamba? Because I know that some people, the one thing I heard from a lot of individuals that, of course, Lou Diamond Phillips, tall glass of water, handsome in his own right, but he portrayed, they hired him to be, to portray this icon, and he was skinny and lanky, and like you said, like Ritchie Valens was like built and a little chubby, and so that was one of the things that they got a little incorrect. But were there any other, I guess, things in that movie that they got wrong about him and things that they got right?
Well, that's what this lady I interviewed, Irene Diaz, went to school with him. She said that he was nothing like he was portrayed in the movie. Obviously from the size and stuff, but she didn't see it reflected his jolliness, what a happy person he was, and how he interacted with other people. She said that just didn't come through in the film. Oh, wow. And then, another person who was in the silhouettes with him, he's always posting how much he hated La Bamba, that it wasn't the Ritchie, because he's the one that got him in the band that he was able to be discovered in. And he said that the stories didn't add up. And then the misportrayal of his brother, I hear that his brother was just liked just as much as Ritchie, but they kind of played him as, somewhat of an alcoholic and kind of, not so nice and jealous, which perhaps there was some of that might have been true, but this wasn't an accurate depiction of him according to the other people. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things that didn't jive, and it would be nice. I get people requesting from me, they want to know more about the real Ritchie, and I find that interesting because it makes me want to do a documentary on just the interviews that I did from people, just to be able to tell his, the story as everyone else saw it.
Right.
So,
right. That's the thing that we always talk about too, is like Hollywood, they'll take a story and they just dissect it and then they'll give their own version of it. And I had like this feeling that even doing my research on Ritchie Valens, I just felt like maybe they got something wrong. Most likely they got something wrong in that film. And of course, like going through some of the interviews you had conducted with, his close friends and even people of the film, it said a different tale through your documentary, your little mini documentary on Pacoima. So that was something like I had to reach out to you and get the details about, because I wanted to make sure we get this right, of course, about his life and who he was as a person.
Right. Well, and like I said, that film did not really depict him accurately, but but you can see the interest in him, which fascinates me. They just dedicated a portion of Interstate 5 to him last year, and I was at that ceremony, and oh my God, the people that came out and wanted, just they couldn't get enough of information on Ritchie. A friend of mine who's an author of his book, The First Latino Rocker, she was there, and she sold out of all of her books because people were just going crazy for Ritchie Valens.
Yeah, I mean, he was the forefather of rock and roll, and not only that, but he's also the forefather of Chicano rock. He really put, Mexican Americans, Mexican singers on the map, where you have a voice and you can, break into this industry. I'm sorry to say this, but this almost whitewashed industry, and be Mexican American and have a voice and, sing your songs, which is so important, and it inspired so many other Hispanic and Mexican American performers, and it branched other genres of music as well, which I found so fascinating in my research as well.
Well, the really sad part about that in his culture was they actually changed his last name just so he wouldn't be Mexican. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of hurtful, that he couldn't stand on his own as a true Mexican American, that he had to make people not know, had to kind of downplay it, and that's kind of sad, but it helped him, catapult into the success that he ended up being. So there's good and bad in both of that aspect of it.
So yeah, leave it to Hollywood to add some inaccuracies.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Unfortunately, things that are based on a true story are editorialized and narrativized, to make up a word. So I think that's why we have documentaries. You know what I mean?
Right.
I do get it. People are like, oh, it wasn't like this or this. But at the end of the day, if a movie is based on something, then it's most likely going to be made for Hollywood. Whereas,
right.
Yeah, I don't want to watch a documentary that has falsities, but they serve different purposes.
Yes, the purpose that it served definitely was to let his legend move on and to teach people about his music.
And I would never try and tell someone well, sorry that your family member's movie didn't satisfy your needs. Mm-hmm. But I think as a general viewing member of the public, I don't need movies to be 100% accurate. That's why we have other forms of reporting and documentation. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, that's a tough one. Whenever something says based on a true story, I'm like,
is it really? Yes. But I'm happy to know that this film was directed by a Latino with Latinos about Latinos. Yep. You know what I mean?
Huge. Especially, honestly, in the 80s, huge.
Huge. Very huge. So here are a few facts that you guys probably didn't know about La Bamba, according to BuzzFeed.com. Here are a couple little tidbits. So the film did not use the original songs sung by Ritchie Valens. Instead, the songs in the film were covered by the East LA-based band Los Lobos. And while it's stated in the film that Steve Ritchie's dad drunk himself to death, the real Steven died from lifelong complications after coming into contact with mustard gas during the First World War. And another fact is Ritchie's real-life mother, Concepcion Reyes, appeared in the film during the family's first party. And then she ends up passing away 3 months after the film's release. Ritchie's real-life sister, Connie Limos, was on set when the infamous coin toss scene was filmed, where Ritchie wins a coin toss to fly alongside the Big Bopper and Buddy Holly. She ends up crying uncontrollably, and she throws herself at Lou Diamond Phillips, screaming, "Why did you have to go? Why did you have to go?" And according to Connie Limos, the film provided closure for the Valenzuela family. They were finally able to accept and let go, which is true because his family were on set every single day of the shooting of the film.
Yeah.
And even in interviews with Lou Diamond Phillips, he was saying how the family would call him Richie. They wouldn't call him by his real name. They would say, "Richie, come over here, Richie, let's do this." And it was a good way for them to have closure, because they were so young and they didn't understand death when they were, little babies, and they heard their older brother,
if you think about it, he's 17.
Yeah.
They're all but one of his siblings are younger than him. So it's just
and that one day he's there and the next day he's gone and they never see him again. So this brought a lot of closure. I know sweet. That a few years ago, Bob ends up passing away, Bob Morales. So yeah, now they're joined with, Ritchie up in the big heaven skies up there.
Oh my, yes. Hey boo hey, it's Bryce Mitchell-Williams.
And Tammy Merhep Chavez.
And we are from Holly Weird Paranormal. And we just wanted to take a second to recommend some great other podcasts that are available now on Stitcher Premium.
If you're looking for some new true crime, then check out True Crime Garage, Off the Record, the latest project from the guys of True Crime Garage, hosts Nick and the Captain.
Hi.
Join them each week as they revisit some of the most haunting cases they've covered to date. This is a compilation of hidden treasures, a chance to dive deeper, discuss new theories, and get updates on your favorite episodes of True Crime Garage.
Or, if you're looking for something a little different, comedian Chris Gethard's Beautiful Stories from Anonymous People opens the phone line to one anonymous caller, and Chris can't hang up first, no matter what. Just like all my first dates. From shocking confessions and family secrets to philosophical discussions and shameless self-promotion, anything can and will happen.
With Stitcher Premium, you'll also get thousands of hours of original content, early access to new releases, exclusive bonus episodes, and archives, and so much more.
And of course, our show, Holly Weird Paranormal, is also available every week on Stitcher Premium.
To get your free month trial of Stitcher Premium, go to StitcherPremium.com and use promo code HollyWeird.
That's StitcherPremium.com, and the promo code is HollyWeird. One word.
One word. Now let's get weird.
Bye.
Bye.
Beep boop, beep boop, boop, boop.
Boop.
Keep that in.
I will. Now we hit the paranormal aftermath, guys.
Spooky.
Very spooky. So, of course, when we talk about a specific individual or a place, is there a paranormal association? So, are there Ritchie Valens ghosts? And if so, has this apparition made its way back to his hometown? And here's what Crystal Jackson had to say. I was asking you, have you heard anything of a paranormal association with maybe the house on Fillmore? I'm sure a lot of our listeners would like to know, is there Ritchie Valens ghosts around Pacoima? And
I wish I had some stories with that. I haven't heard anything personally. I mean, I have other paranormal things that have happened in Pacoima. I mean, they have, horseless people, or they through the Indians, basically. I've heard stories, but I have not heard anything about any paranormal Ritchie Valens, but it wouldn't surprise me.
It wouldn't surprise you, yeah. We were looking into other areas in Iowa where where him, the Big Bopper, and Buddy Holly had their last performance. So there's some stories right there, but we are not 100% that they are related to Ritchie Valens. But you did bring up a good point that the premonition of the crash and his death, that was, we could pan it off as supernatural, paranormal.
Absolutely, because, he felt it. You can't discount how he just had this feeling that there was something about airplanes that he didn't like. He had the one instance, but he didn't like planes before that happened. That just kind of, put icing on the cake and feel like a planes, but he didn't like planes prior to that. But like a lot of us as kids dealt with the planes over at Whiteman Airport, and we didn't think anything of them. Mm-hmm. But it affected Ritchie, and he expressed that to all his friends. So that I found like really interesting, that he had that premonition, ahead of time that there was something possibly going to happen with airplanes.
And so sad because it ended up happening due to a coin toss with another musician when they were at the Surf Ballroom, and they were supposed to fly to a different location, and I guess pretty much his destiny, like his life was going to end that night, unfortunately. So
right. The sad part about that was that I don't think he would have even done that had he had the flu. He had been sick because they were dealing with broken down heaters in their buses, and people were sick. One person actually ended up with frostbite. They're in Iowa in the snow, and so the conditions were miserable. And I wonder if those conditions wouldn't have been that bad, would he really have done that coin toss and got on the plane? Because if he would have been in good health, and the situation was better, I have a feeling he would have jumped back on the bus and not on the plane.
Right.
But it was the circumstances, surrounding it that actually got him to engage in that. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of eerie, but he felt it was just going to happen, just whatever cosmic forces were just leading in that direction from way back when, and he felt it. Mm-hmm. He felt it.
Can you share with us maybe one of the biggest ghost stories that may circulate around Pacoima that that you can share with our listeners?
Well, a lot of people talk about Gravity Hill, and there was a house. I don't know if have you ever heard of Gravity Hill?
No, I haven't.
Okay, Gravity Hill, I went there as a teenager. Everybody, I think, in Pacoima has gone there. And when you go to Gravity Hill, you put your car in neutral, and the car pulls uphill. It's the weirdest sensation, and we've all done it, and it's still there. And across from Gravity Hill is what they called Pioneer Cemetery. It was a cemetery that Charles put there in 1874. But they stopped burying people there in 1930. But there's still some weird phenomena with that, and there's another home there that people say they believe is haunted. So there's some weird stuff in Pacoima. That's one of the many. But the Gravity Hill is something. If you ever want to go do a broadcast from that and feel that sensation of how your car gets pulled backward. You go down to the bottom of the hill, and the gravity pulls you up the hill when the car's in neutral. It's the weirdest sensation, and you can't even understand how that happens. That's one of the biggest phenomena.
I'm going to have to grab Bryce to do that.
Gravity Hill it's been there around forever.
Oh,
so it's just weird. And then, then there was another instance where actually there was some flooding, serious rains, and apparently there was coffins going down the hill. And
what? Oh, no.
Well, yeah, because the ground was saturated from the rain, and the coffins just started rising, going down, and there was found body parts later. Just weird.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was horrible. But I interviewed a lady that remembers a time when that happened, so I was just like, wow. So there's some cool little stories that
Pacoima's weird. Pacoima can be weird and interesting, folks. Go visit Pacoima.
Exactly. Well, the problem is, the mentality that people say, and the news reportings and how awful it's supposed to be is, but there's this other side that you can't even imagine. You can't imagine all the great people that came out of there and the great stories, and just the things that were done, and nobody hears that. They just hear, oh, there was a drive-by shooting, blah blah blah, and it's really sad because they're missing out on a lot of great stories, great information. So I'm glad I was able to dig up some of them. There's still a lot more to be dug up. But like I said, some of them, have some unsettled auras about them. And I still think a lot of it stems back from the Indian story. That's just my personal theory. I can't write about that.
No, I believe there is an association, especially with that tribe, because, I'm trying to research more on a location in Beverly Hills of Benedict Canyon. And Benedict Canyon, it was, I wouldn't say it was inhabited by a specific tribe, but it was kind of like a common ground of transportation of roadways where different tribes would pass, in and out of. And there could be an association to that. Absolutely, I 100% agree. But
well, yeah, when you piece the stories together, you just can't help but wonder. You kind of look at it and you say, nothing concrete to say that this is related to that, but it still doesn't change the fact that how did all this happen? How did it happen? Well, like for Pacoima, how could they have created so many, Grammy and Emmy and, NFL, Major League Baseball, basketball, Harlem Globetrotter people? I mean, the list just on and on. Sometimes I can't even remember them all because there's so many, authors and, just great stuff, and just say, well, how does that come from such a small area that's supposed to be so bad?
It really isn't.
Pacoima is definitely the murals. The murals are amazing.
Yes, I'm looking at them online, and they're beautiful, absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, the only complaint people say about murals is that they're not all centrally located. You have to go to different, spots. They're on the side of this building or that building, and they're not, it's just not just one place you can go and see them all. But they're worth seeing. You just sense of this talent. The muralists are so talented, and then the stories that these pictures tell just make you give a sense of what Pacoima is all about.
Well, the stories that you were telling me, I mean, they gave me goosebumps, and I mean, it's not just a dot outside of Los Angeles. It's a big community.
My town is truly amazing to me. I've been working on this since 2015 is when I pretty much started, and my jaw still drops to this day when I really analyze the story and say, wow, how did this happen?
Where can people learn more about the history of Pacoima?
Well, at this time, of course, the website, Pacoima Historical Society website, has some bare minimum. The book and the film, Pacoima Stories, Land of Dreams, that's available online at pacoimastories.com. And then the book will be coming out in a few months, and that goes in a little bit deeper into those stories, the same stories that are in the book, and then a little bit more than that. So those are the two main things, and then I'm building up more and more to make it more available. We have Pacoima History Day once a year where you can come out and look at the exhibits and learn a little bit more. But we're growing it little by little.
Are you the mayor by any chance of Pacoima? You should be, absolutely. Your passion is just so amazing. It's so awesome, and I mean, that's so great that you're writing like this book, and it's it's almost ready to come out. We definitely want to get a copy.
I can't help but be excited about it, and I just want this to keep going, and I couldn't let the film just be a one-off. Because there's still so much more to tell. And, the reaction I get from the followers on Facebook, everyone that was from the town loves the town. You have a handful of people that have bad experiences, but the overwhelming majority love the stories, and that they're proud of it, just to have something to be proud of after hearing so much negative stuff. And I'm happy to bring that to people because I was born there, but I actually left Pacoima. I left the valley, a while back and moved to Northern California. And that's when it hit me because the whole time I lived there, I was embarrassed to say I was from Pacoima because people kind of looked at you like, oh, you're low class. They don't look at you the same when you said you were from Pacoima. But once I moved away, I was proud, because nobody had heard of it for one. But I was proud, and I put it when Facebook started in 2010. I put that's my hometown, Pacoima. That's where I was born, and that's what triggered me to actually do documentary. Because I'm like, I gotta know, because there was a feeling in that town. You felt the community. me and my great-grandmother used to walk down Fillmore Street to this Romans market, and you felt like you were at home. You knew all the neighbors. You knew everyone. You had relatives on every street. It was just, just a feeling that my kids never have, and I recognized that. And I'm like, I got to tell this story. I got to try to let people understand what what this story about Pacoima is all about. And luckily I was able to, to pull and continue it so that everyone understood what the real history was. It seemed like the history was trying to be hidden to me for a while, because it wasn't easy to find. It was not easy. It wasn't like you can go do your research and just find out everything about Pacoima. It was hard to even find out anything. It was all buried. It's pretty motivating to keep the story going.
Yeah.
To make sure that it's out there and it's researchable, and that that the information is accurate history. That's what I'm looking for. Because so much of the information I come across is not accurate, including, I can start back from the meaning of Pacoima. They said for years it meant rushing waters. And that was mainly because they were trying to entice buyers that the land, had a lot of water. They didn't have water issues because it was agricultural. But the truth was it meant the entrance. And that's partially why I named the book The Entrance, because that's the name, what Pacoima means in the Tatavian language. It means la entrada, or the entrance. So, it's just, just finding out the truth. And that truth wasn't that easy to come across either. I just got lucky I came across the tribe. And they clarified a lot of things for me. And it's pretty cool, but, it's a lot of work. Sometimes I think my brain is on overload because it's a little bit too much information for me sometimes. I'm like, okay, I got to be able to separate this stuff so it doesn't all merge together.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with us, and we'll definitely get in touch with you soon. And congratulations on your book.
Thank you, Tammy. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you. Bye, Crystal.
Bye-bye.
All right, so there's really no confirmation on apparition of Ritchie Valens or anything, but she did give us some pretty juicy Pacoima legends.
I'm just so obsessed with this real life Leslie Knope champion of Pacoima. Like, Crystal, you rock. Like,
you do.
I love her love of Pacoima is so tangible, and I love it so much. Just this city isn't what the media tells you it is.
Exactly.
It's not what you hear on the news. It's not a bad part of LA. We've talked about this so many times, but at the end of the day, LA is all these cities that just grew so quickly and merged into this monstrosity that is now called Los Angeles. But they have the individual histories and flavor and culture and service to the community. And I love her quest to preserve Pacoima. I'm so touched by that.
We need people like Crystal, and I don't mean to get on a tangent or a rant before I head into more stories of the paranormal aftermath. But one thing that really freaking ticks me off is when people tell me there's no culture in Los Angeles.
Oh yeah.
Fuck you, there is. Sorry, not sorry. Let me walk. Here's my list. Number one, what was the real reason why you came here? Entertainment. It's what everybody comes every day for. It's what I am always caught in traffic because I'm being, stuck behind a rental car with lost tourists. They all want to come and see the Hollywood Walk of Fame. They want to see, where Pretty Woman was shot and all this stuff. That's one of them is just entertainment. Second, traffic. That's what you experience when you get out of LAX after how many hours? Girl. Traffic is a culture. Third is surfing. We have surfing here in the OC, Venice. And if you go to San Jose, you'll learn the history of that. I can't stand it when people tell me there's no culture. Fuck you, there is.
Also, the mission, if you do even a little research into the history of the missions, it's fucking fascinating.
Yes.
LA would not be here without the missions and their bloody history. It's
that
such
too.
A tapestry of beauty and chaos woven into this now Southern California city sphere. Like,
exactly.
We've got culture. And, like, let's talk about food. Good luck trying to get any produce anywhere else in the country.
Exactly.
In the, quote, off month. We don't have an off month. Like, you want good food, you come here.
You come here, guys. There's good food everywhere. If you go to Little Mexico, there's a bunch of places there. We have a Little Tokyo, a.k.a. Japangeles. We have Koreatown. We have Chinatown. We have Little Armenia. Hell, we even have a Little Ethiopia.
Oh, God. That's so funny that you bring that up. I just had Ethiopian food for the first time.
Yeah.
On a date. Whoops. Mind-blowing. I don't know how I've lived my life
Off
so
a Miracle
long.
Mile, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to know what happened, though?
Oh, God,
I, went to take a bite, and it's all very, spiced. And I, breathed in as I was taking a bite, and the powder, went into my lungs, and I spent the rest of the night, hacking up a lot.
Oh, no.
Needless to say, I'm still single. Yeah, crushed it.
What else? We have, Little India and Gardena. We have Filipino Town.
Yep.
I mean, to my fellow Filipino listeners, guys, call me up. We'll have, a date to the Jollibee and have a halo,
yes.
man. Yes. And how can we forget the biggest culture of them all? Los Dodgers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, God.
I'm wearing, look at me. I'm wearing the Los Angeles Dodgers shirt. I love this baseball team. Everyone loves the baseball team here. Bring 88 back. That is a freaking culture. Vin Scully, that man is part of that culture. The people that live here in the communities, immigrants, everyone, they make up the city. And this is why I love doing this podcast, because in some weird way, I feel like it's like our love letter, this little haunted love letter to this weird, crazy city that keeps us here.
It's just like any city. If you look at it, like Crystal was saying, if you look at what the news or the media or the portrayal tells you, it just looks like this one thing. But if you do even just a little bit of exploration, you discover such a rich tapestry. I don't know. I agree. We kind of bitch about it a lot, but I do love this stupid city.
We do. We love you, LA, and I get goosebumps every time I go on Blueberry Podcasting, our hosting site. Word up to Blueberry.
What up, girl?
But every time I go on there, our number one downloads come from California U.S. states, and our number one downloads from U.S. metro cities come out of Los Angeles. And that to me means the world. And
also, no one likes talking about Angelinos and listening to them as much as Angelinos. So,
Exactly.
I get it.
Second on that list price is Ohio.
Come on, Ohio.
Buckeyes.
Look, but it's because everyone in Ohio fled to LA, so.
It's true. It's true.
Or the moon.
See, there's a reason why people come here, and that is because it's the culture, folks. We have culture. Open a book. Go talk to people. Go to Pacoima. There you go.
Crystal, you rock.
You rock. All right, guys. Let's talk about some ghosts, guys. We got some Pacoima ghosts coming up soon, because I have a little tidbit about Gravity Hill. But first off, in relation to the crash, there's a show called Dead Famous.
Yes.
So it starred psychic and medium Chris Fleming, and he had done an investigation at the Surf Ballroom in Iowa. So that was the location of the before the crash, where they did their last concert, Surf Ballroom.
I love that it's still standing.
It's still standing, and every year they do a memoriam for them. They have a huge festival and concert. So according to their investigation in the ballroom, Fleming and another psychic picked up on an energy from what they believed to be Ritchie Valens. According to them in the show, they felt a warm presence and the sense of being under a spotlight and feeling that warmth of the spotlight. They also heard footsteps and had seen shadow figures backstage by the green room. The green room is a very interesting location, because that's where all the musicians left their signatures on the wall. And you can see Buddy Holly's, Big Bopper's, and Ritchie's signature on the wall.
Cool.
Workers who've worked in the Surf Ballroom have even mentioned that they could hear music even when the ballroom is closed.
I love that.
One gentleman in particular mentioned a story that he was closing up and he heard music coming from the green room, and when he went backstage, it was completely pitch black, empty, and dark. So my theory on this is that they do the Winter Dance Party festival there. That's the festival that they bring Donna Ludwig Fox to meet the fans. I think when you bring those people, they honor these three musicians, it's like they're, keeping their memories and also their spirits alive. So, this is the place that they're probably most familiar with.
Sure.
And this is the last place where they, were in front of 1,500 people, You know what
I love too is in almost every theater that I've ever worked in, I always try and take a moment to myself to like say goodbye to the space. Because you never really know when you're going to be like acting again.
Right.
You never really know when you're going to be performing again, and you never really know when you're going to be in a space again. And the two in particular, ironically, at the theater that I worked at in Indiana, we did the Buddy Holly musical, which is a really beautiful show.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that.
It was such a special experience in general because that cast was so lovely. But I remember both at the Academy, ironically, when I was there as a company member, after our showcase, I just went into the theater. You know how you can like walk back through the back and then like kind of come out through the theater. And I just like stood on the stage. There's a point to this story, I promise. And I just stood on the stage and kind of like thanked the space for the year I had had. And I did that when I was leaving Indiana as well, to the wagon wheel. And there's this weird phenomenon for me that happens where you really feel almost like a movie voiceover of like all the moments that have happened in that theater in the silence. And you really can like hear yourself saying and experiencing those lines and those moments that you had on that stage space. And so like to me, you know, I'm definitely a bit more skeptical or awash, if you will, when it comes to like the paranormal. But whenever we talk about like haunted theater episode and when we talk about like this particular space, like it makes so much sense to me that like people, you know, they always talk about like when we're in that space, you can hear the music, whether that means through hearing the actual apparitions or just the energy of nostalgia or just the magic of performance itself. I very much understand like what that feels like because I've experienced it. Like, oh right, like when you're in a space for the last time, you really can like viscerally experience the past of the performance. 100%. Yeah, I love that like every year they celebrate
that. And here's the thing, guys, and this is my theory, our theory actually, why spaces like this hold energy, theaters, music halls, why they seem to be haunted is because it's simple. The stage absorbs everything. Period. It absorbs every single emotion, from the musician, the backup bands, and the fans. That's a lot of energy there. And that night, that was a sold-out show. That was 1,500 people in that one space. So you can imagine, you know, all the stress of the tour, them being sick, that all goes away when you're on stage. And they played their hearts out. And, you know, maybe in some different universe, a part of them revisits that. And a part of them comes back for that celebration that they do every year, which I find very beautiful.
I love that.
Now let's travel a few miles down to the site of the crash, and that's Clear Lake. So Clear Lake residents report seeing, this is what they report, they see a phantom plane in the area, and ghostly lights are often seen in the field. Now, Jeff Nicholas, who is the farmer that now owns the Iowa field that played site of the crash, stated in an interview with Dead Famous that you can feel the significance and understanding of the musicians who died here. The field is identical to the night of the crash, and you get a sense of what they felt moments before the crash. Nicholas also stated that there are times when he is working in the fields late at night that he feels a sense of anxiety followed by a sense of sadness. Paranormal investigators have traveled to the cornfield to conduct paranormal investigations with their spirit box, and they came up with a couple of astounding evidence through the spirit box sessions, some that are pretty eerie and pretty remarkable. So they collected voices through the spirit box.
Sorry, what's a spirit box?
So a spirit box is a tool that they use to pretty much communicate with any energy or spirit through these radio waves with words.
Whoa.
So it catches those words and it communicates them out of the box.
Got it.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've seen paranormal shows, but you kind of see them in one, you know, instance of their investigation where they have this little voice box and it's spewing out all this white noise. And then you hear these little words that come out and it's catching all these radio frequencies. That's what a spirit box is. Got it. So they've collected voices from that field saying the words music, guitar, concert, holly, crash, and cold. So that is the paranormal association with those two locations. Now, in reference to Crystal Jackson's local legends of Pacoima, last weekend I went to Pacoima and I traveled to Gravity Hill by Kegel Canyon.
Alone, for everyone that's wondering. No, I did not go there.
And I did try to find the place where you can put your car in neutral. So someone on the message board mentioned like it's a few meters or it's a few feet away from this Jewish cemetery.
Okay.
It's the entrance. It's right around there. And I kept on, putting my car in neutral and I kept on going backwards. I'm like, I'm not moving forward. I'm looking like an idiot compared to these cars that are like traveling back and
Hilarious.
forth. But I could not find it. But I will say this, when I was around that canyon, I don't know if it's the elevation, but I felt like my equilibrium was completely thrown off.
Which is funny, actually, when you mentioned that earlier today, the first thing I thought of was that was how you were affected at the house.
At the Omen house.
Yes. Like right away you were like, oh my, I'm like feeling really dizzy. I wonder if that's like your tell, for lack of a better word, or like your key into it. You know what I mean?
My intuition?
Yeah,
absolutely. Because it's not like when I walked into David's house.
Yes.
So David's house, for those who don't know, David's house is what we call the haunted house in Beverly Hills. It's 150 feet away from the Sharon Tate murders, the location of where the murders occurred, and what we believe is that his house sits on a geometric anomaly that attracts a lot of this energy from the canyon and possibly from the murder site. So there is this room in his basement where people walk in and you can instantly feel dizzy. And every time I walk in that room, it's like I get really dizzy. I feel off. And that was like exactly what happened to me. I felt really off when I was in that area. And according to a story on a message board through the Historical Society of Pacoima, because Crystal did this amazing thing of asking people about, local legends, there's this one person that said, when I was young, my dad took me to Gravity Hill. He put his car in neutral. We went uphill. We were supposed to go downhill, but then I remember seeing these weird shadow figures by the Jewish cemetery.
No.
And it's a creepy little cemetery.
They all are.
They all are, but this one looked a little creepy. So, yeah. And then there was another one from the message board. And for those who are tuning in from Pacoima, okay, is it Old Man Goat or Old Man Ghost? So there's a tale that a lot of these individuals stated that when they were growing up, they remember seeing this old man and he looked like a ghost. And if you go to his front yard, he'll come out screaming at you. Ugh. And I think he had a goat, or he had goats, and people would go over there and kind of mess with the goats, and he would run out yelling and screaming at you and chase you down a hill.
Yes, I've read the Harry Potter books. Go on.
So I want to know if it's Old Man Goat or Old Man Ghost, and let me know your tales, guys.
Yes.
Just email us at hollyweirdparanormal@gmail.com. So that is our episode of the life and afterlife of Ritchie Valens, guys. Just to forewarn you, we are not professionals. We did our best to research, and we reached out to Crystal Jackson.
I would say, if you want a professional, go to Crystal Jackson.
Get her
I'm
book.
obsessed with her.
Yes,
I love
read
her
book. Watch her documentary. You can find it on historicalsocietyofpacoima.org.
Yes.
It's there. It's a wonderful work of art, what she's done with that documentary, and I'm sure her book is going to be very amazing.
Yes.
So watch out for that, guys. So if you love Hollyweird Paranormal, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give us a review on iTunes. It really helps us out a lot, and it helps us become a little more visible. And if you can't get enough of Hollyweird Paranormal, then stalk us on Instagram and Facebook at Hollyweird Paranormal and Twitter at HWP Podcast. If you have a story that you're dying to share, no pun intended, then email us at hollyweirdparanormal@gmail.com. You can catch up with our past episodes on Blueberry, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, CastBox. and Player FM and Spotify.
We're everywhere.
We are everywhere. And if you really are a fan of our podcast, guys, and you want to donate, help us out a little bit, then you can do so by traveling on over to our Patreon page, which is www.patreon.com/HollyWeirdParanormal. And there you can find our little page, our little donate section, and you can donate as little as $1 a month, or just for that 1 month, whatever you want. So it does help us out a lot.
Yes, it does.
It helps us pay for our hosting site, and we're actually saving up for better equipment, since people keep on reminding us that we need to be professional sound engineers and we need to invest more on expensive sound equipment. But we do live in Los Angeles, so all that money goes to rent, guys.
I don't know. We're going to start recording on our phones.
I know, seriously. Seriously. But yes, guys, we really loved doing this episode.
Yes.
I am a huge fan of Ritchie Valens. Has always been a fan when I was young. I mean, I remember watching La Bamba, but I also remember my parents playing his music. And that will forever be imprinted in my mind.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to say, Bryce?
Just keep on congratulating ourselves for not singing any of the songs. Good for us.
How do you pronounce Pacoima again?
Yeah, right. Ugh, here we go.
All right, guys. Till next time, stay Holly Weird.
Bye.
Music currently playing by Mikhail Mironov. Music at the top of the episode was by Chill Hop. We wanted to take the time to thank our patrons. With your donations and your support, you guys help produce this episode. So thank you so much for all your love and support. Also, a huge thank you to Cynthia Jackson, head of the Historical Pacoima Society. If you love Holly Weird Paranormal or want to learn more about us, head on over to hollyweirdparanormal.blueberry.net. And to our friends and to the city of Pacoima, stay Holly Weird. Till next time, friends.